What is going on? I want to welcome you from half court for today, August 23rd, 2023. I am one of your hosts, Sean Murphy, alongside the man, the myth, the legend, the Marquette Heat with the Upper Peninsula on his sheet, Troy Sergey. Upper Peninsula on his sheet. I had to manipulate it just a little bit to get it to rhyme. But anyway, you get it. Troy, how's it going, man?
It's going good, Sean. Was able on Friday to head up to Cleveland and watch a doubleheader with Tigers and Guardians. It was a fun game. They won the first game and then lost the second. But of course, we know this isn't from home plate, from half court. But anytime I have an opportunity to see anything Detroit sports related in person, I'm down. So
I mean, hey, baseball's. Activity. I mean, it's fun to go to a professional sporting event in general, too.
Regardless.
Yeah, so. Yeah. And I mean, the Tigers actually have been decent of late, even though they lost. Like when you saw them, like like there's been moments where Tigers fans haven't completely hated their lives, and that's
right. And second place in the division is slowly creeping in on Cleveland. So there's still hope, maybe. I don't know.
But... to replace the H and hope with a C, and then I think that's about where they're at.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone's beating the Twins in the division. So
no. But you know what? You know what's not beaten. You know what else is beat? You know what is going to beat the Twins? Basketball, everything related to it, because baseball sucks. Because this is from half court. No, I'm kidding. Baseball's okay, but this is from half court, where we talk all things NBA basketball in general. Detroit Pistons. If you like that, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that mother notification bell. Go harass Jeff Iafrady on Twitter at Jeff Iafrady. Tell him to stop getting sick. Just kidding. We love our boy Jeff. Actually, before we start the pod, I'm not sure if you saw this, Troy. If you did not, then this is a pretty cool moment to celebrate our guy Jeff. Regardless, over the weekend, Jeff was able to host a post-game stream for the Lions preseason game on Bleacher Report. Our guy, Jeff Iafrady, out here doing big things, man. 22 years old, hosting Bleacher Report. Are you kidding me?
Pretty cool. Shout out to Jeff.
Shout out to Jeff. He's too famous for us. But anyway, Troy, let's talk basketball, baby. The schedule came out last week. We finally know who the Pistons will play and when and where and what kind of troubles they will face. You know, it's hard to talk about and predict the season when you don't know the 82-game schedule. Obviously, Troy, you and I have been around the NBA sun, so to speak, a few times. So we know generally what to expect from a NBA schedule. But with that being said, was there anything that stuck out to you? Were there any games that you went and circled on your calendar? What are you excited about when you see the schedule? And what worries you when you see this?
A couple things. Obviously, nothing crazy worries me. It is interesting, you know, the Detroit versus everyone mentality with the most back-to-back doubleheader back-to-back games and then any other team in the
Isn't it weird, by the way, that people's entire opinions flip after they see the schedule? It's like, you realize they're playing the teams the same amount of times regardless, right?
Right. So there's rest in between that you would hope that would win, you know, some of those games, you know, with fresh legs. So I'm not too worried about that. Obviously, we know every team in the East has that West Coast stint there. And sometimes we see that a little bit earlier than others. Sometimes we see that more mid-season. Occasionally we'll see towards the end of the season. But right now, that'll be interesting.
Right now, it's right before the All-Star break.
Yeah, so. Which certainly adds a different element, because I think it's tradition that you want to always go into the All-Star break with a couple wins under your belt as far as leading you into that. And not saying that's impossible for the Pistons to do, but certainly a difficult task to do. But I think the big thing is there's a stretch, I think, in March where they have 10 games and 9 out of those 10 are at home. So, I mean, if we're seriously looking at the Pistons as maybe an 11th or 10th seed by early March, that could be an opportunity to push maybe for a solid 10th or even a ninth seed. So that's encouraging as a Pistons fan, I think. Some difficult opponents still in that home stretch, but to answer your last question, is there any games I have circled on the calendar? Obviously, first home game of the year, Chicago. Just the fact that LCA, I feel like, will definitely be sold out. I think the city of Detroit is really excited about this team and this roster. But also the
It
big
was
thing.
sold out last year, so no reason they can't do it again.
And I think even the year before that. So I would say the Houston game against Detroit, that's going to be nationally televised. Obviously, the Thompson twins going head to head is probably the main storyline that made that a national televised game. But no matter what, I mean, we love the Cade Jalen Green rivalry, and certainly Asar versus Amen will be a new rivalry in the making as well. So
it's one of the most fun, authentically growing rivalries in the league, in my opinion.
Mike Korzemba did a video on that. I know how you feel about him, but I like Korzemba.
Markel Fultz is Jesus resurrected. Okay, anyway, sorry. Anyway, I could do a whole thing. Shout out Mike Korzemba. He does make some good content. But looking at the schedule, like the big thing that sticks out to me in particular, Troy, obviously you're going to have your stretches where you're playing at home more than others. But, when you look at the way that the Pistons schedule played out, it's very favorable, particularly towards the beginning of the season. Like specifically those first 2 or 3 months when they kind of have their, more significant home stretches. And, it's really when they get to February and beyond is when things start getting a little bit more difficult. And specifically when they're away from home, especially those final few weeks of the season, if this team is going to want to make a push for the play-in tournament. I mean, listen to who they're going to have to play in April, Troy. Memphis, Atlanta, Memphis, Brooklyn, Philly, Chicago, Dallas, San Antonio. Like that is not an easy April. And mind you, but right before April starts, they play some favorable opponents all on the road.
Yeah.
And a lot of those games I listed were also on the road too. So you look at, obviously when you're looking at, young teams, the biggest hurdle is learning how to win on the road. But it's kind of interesting. It's almost like the Pistons were better on the road last year than they were at home. It felt like a lot of their bad losses happened when they were at the LCA. So I almost wonder if that's not as much of a factor, but at the same time, again, this isn't the NFL where you see a schedule and it's like, oh, you only play these certain opponents every year. And then we get to see when and where, obviously there's, you play, if you're in the East, you play 4 times a year. If you're at, opposite conferences, you play 2 times a year. It's just a matter of when they line up in the calendar and what stretches you're home and what stretches you're away. But there is another wrinkle to this year's schedule because Troy, for the very first time, we have a in-season tournament that is going to be happening. And we now know, I mean, we already knew who they were going to play from the group, selections and the announcements, but we now have on the schedule officially announced when these games are going to be happening. So specifically, the very first in-season tournament game for the Pistons is Friday, November 10th at 7, where they're going to be hosting the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, obviously, I know for fans, it's a little bit difficult to picture what this tournament's going to be like, and it can be a little difficult to think of, why they should be invested. But I think, Troy, the fact that they're adding something of incentive at the beginning of the year will add some extra fun. And I would argue if there's any team in the league that could benefit from an in-season tournament, it's a team like the Pistons, getting important basketball reps for something of consequence early in the season. And you don't even have to qualify for the playoffs to have that experience. I think overall teams like Detroit, Indiana, and Oklahoma City in particular, I feel like this could be a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think no matter what, getting high pressure moments on some of these younger guys to shine And a lot of them do have March Madness experience. We think of Ivy and Cade, but this is a little bit different. These are pros. This is Joel Embiid. This is
These are
Tyrese
grown
Halliburton.
men.
Yeah, Tyrese Halliburton. This is Trae Young. This is Donovan Mitchell. So I think I'm certainly going to be excited about what this I think can look like. I think it can be fun to look at how these guys perform as far as do they cave or do they rise up to the challenge? And my bet would be on the second option. And I just think it's good for the league. It'll make people interested and engaged, and even for our casual NBA fan friends, for them to tune in when maybe they wouldn't.
Yeah.
All the reason to grow the game as well. And I've even seen in the past 10, 15 years in my life, when I started really becoming an NBA fan till now, I mean, more people know about the game, more people know about players than I remember as a kid growing up. So,
Yeah, most definitely, man. And listen, is this something that's going to take on instantly? Probably not. However, like what we can say is that, to have those games right at the beginning of the season, especially against those high quality opponents, where, especially for a team like Detroit that has something to prove, that wants to make a statement about where they are in the league, I think this is a platform, especially where they can do that, because, they won't just be reporting on these like their normal games, because since there is that tournament and that thing at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, like it is going to be covered as such, and it is going to give a little bit extra highlight. So I think it's one of those things, especially like, when a lot of people were skeptical, skeptical, my gosh, if I can talk, about the play-in tournament a couple years ago. I think it'd be a very similar thing where once it starts going, we realize that, it really calls for a spirit of competition. I think it only means good things for the game.
yeah, yeah. And anything good for the game, I'm all in for. But yes, I mean, the counterpoint, though, is like, yes, it's new. It's a little bit hard to follow as far as, okay, this team wins. Where did they go next? Yada, yada,
Right.
yada. But it's a little bit hard. I think it's going to take a first year for us fans to really be able to fully wrap and identify what the heck this thing is. But I think once that's established, we'll be looking into maybe next season, not this upcoming season, but the season after, with maybe a little bit more open eyes and open hearts toward it. So,
Yeah, 100%. Really, ultimately, it's just going to come down to when basketball's back, right?
yeah, yeah, yes,
Yeah. And, I do think, like I said earlier, it's interesting how people's like opinions change when they look at the schedule. Like before, it's like, oh, I saw people going, man, this team could easily get to, I saw someone say this team could get to 45 wins, which I'm like, are you kidding me? That's a 28 win jump. Let's be a little practical. And then on the other end, it's like, now that I've seen the schedule, I don't know. Like, do you think it's because people are finally realizing what that road actually looks like? Like, do you think when we see the schedule now, like, do you think this is a sobering reminder of how much parity there really is? Because I remember even 5, 6 years ago talking about the Eastern Conference, and like Troy, I can only, like, back in the day, I could only think of like 3 or 4 teams in the East that were good, let
yeah.
alone teams that had shot at contending.
Right. And I think that's exactly it. And that might be where the worry I think we do have to play the game. And I know you and Kool-Aid played this game on the Woodward Pistons show the other night of, okay, instead of guessing the win total, look at the Eastern Conference and say, who are we better than?
Yep.
And I think that can be an important thing to look at, but also sometimes maybe even a scary thing to look at, because you realize there are teams that, oh, I guess I thought we were better, but maybe not. Maybe I was wrong. So I think then when we look at those teams in the East that we're playing 4 times throughout the spread of the schedule, it can be maybe a little bit defeating mentally. But also, we're not the ones going out on the court playing. So we have to trust that Monty Williams has them in shape, that they're going to be a better roster than we expect them to be. I know I'm a Pistons fan, and over the years, there's been teams with, the Reggie Jackson, Andre Drummond that I had high hopes for, but it didn't work out. But we can't compare this team to that team.
Oh,
Yes, we're certainly in the rebuilding stage or the restoration stage still. That hasn't been totally gone away from. But I think the big thing that I see in this is that we have to play competitive basketball every night, and there's going to be games that we think we're going to win and we're going to lose. There's going to be games that we think we're going to go into lose and we're going to surprise with a win. And we just have to be patient with this team and trust the coaching and trust the young talent and the development. So,
yep, just got to give it time.
Yeah.
I mean,
what the
Troy,
heck
you brought
is
it up.
that?
We played. Oh, well, you brought it up. We played that game earlier, and I figured,
Yeah.
you know what? Let's play the game together. Let's go through. Let's look at the teams in the East, and let's see. Let's name who we think they're better than. Because I think just to give a little bit of perspective as to where they're actually, where we think they're actually at. So, like, let's start right down here. Are they better than the Hornets? I'm going to go out on a limb, and I think they're better than the Hornets.
Yes, me too.
I feel comfortable saying that. Now, let's go to the next team that we can definitively say we think they're going to be better than, the Wizards.
Yes.
I think we can agree the Wizards are going to be booty cheeks on a stick, right?
Yeah.
Jordan Poole is going to be, he's going to be able to, really get as many touches as he wants. Who knows? Maybe he gets some 30-point games this year, but we'll see if they even get to 30 wins. And then we go down to, then it gets a little bit more complicated because you go to teams like the Raptors. Are they definitively better than the Raptors? I don't know. Because as of today, if they keep Pascal Siakam, that's a pretty even matchup. Is it not?
Yeah, I mean, I would not say definitively. I could see a reality where we maybe have a better record or we beat them 3 out of 4 games. But to say that we are better than the Raptors, I'm not going to make that statement.
I mean, yes, I would take our overall future outlook.
Oh, of course.
And
but that's not what we're talking about. That's not what we're
exactly.
Talking about.
Today, are they better than the Raptors? I can't definitively say they are. So, Troy, we only named like 3 teams in the Eastern Conference, so we can definitively say we think that they're better than. And even then, we only really said 2. So
now,
at that point, that's contending for a play-in spot.
Now, you brought up Toronto, but if you bring up Toronto, I think you have to bring up Orlando and Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think they're in very similar spots, Orlando and Chicago. I don't think you can definitively say they're better than either, especially, if the Bulls are fully healthy, they still have 2 guys, who are all-star caliber players, even though they're, for all intents and purposes, mid, on a night-to-night basis, they're still going to be competitive.
Yeah, right.
They're still going to keep games close. So, like you look at the entire conference, like even teams like the Knicks, who have been a laughingstock for years, they're not a joke any longer. Like you said, the Magic with all the young talent they have, they look extremely promising. Even the Hawks, a team that you kind of wonder where they could be. I wouldn't be shocked if the Hawks were 4th, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Hawks were 14th.
Yeah. Brooklyn, another interesting storyline. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. That team, that's another team that can end up like pretty much anywhere. And you can't necessarily just say they're going to be a bottom of the barrel team because they have some true talent.
Absolutely.
They have some guys that can play. But Troy, the Pistons aren't really playing right now. And until that schedule really starts, there isn't really a whole lot of things for us to say about the Pistons at this time. One thing we can talk about, however, some basketball that is being played is some FIBA World Cup action. Specifically, Team USA is doing their US Team USA showcase right before the FIBA World Cup. And just a couple days ago, they played a really close competitive game against Germany. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, how did they barely beat Germany? Well, you have to look at international basketball completely differently than even 10 years ago, because the overall talent level is growing massively. You even look at Germany. They have multiple players who play in the NBA. Dennis Schroeder was on their team. Mo Wagner was on their team.
Daniel Tice.
Like, they have guys who have legitimate league experience. And especially with like the way that FIBA rules are, where it's a little bit more of a physical game. Things are, there's certain things that are allowed in FIBA that aren't in the league. Like, it's catered to be closer basketball. And so, it's always interesting to see, how Team USA in particular adjusts, because it's a lot of egos that you're putting together. A lot of guys who are used to starting and having the ball like primarily in their hands. Like, some of those guys might not even play. And so, like, that's a lot of things to juggle. But even within that, Troy, like, I don't think you can definitively say after watching all these games, like, oh yeah, the USA are a shoo-in to go in the World Cup. Cause I mean, we haven't won the World Cup in a minute, but I think what we definitely can say is it speaks to the fact that this is our B team and this is the talent that we have. Like, it just speaks to how deep the world's talent is, especially, I mean, the United States.
Yeah, I mean, the game is growing, not just in the NBA's popularity, but just the game itself of basketball. And I think that's exciting. And it's exciting to know that there's talent and players being produced all across the globe. That just makes me excited. And we look at some of the stars in this league. I mean, some of the best players. We think of Giannis. We think of Luka.
Nikola
Jokic, probably the most obvious one. Not born and raised on American soil, and shows you that, yes, Team USA, and when in the past, I mean, let's just break it down. In the past, 10, 15 years ago, we think of the Redeem team, that 2008 team in Beijing. Who was on that team? Kobe, LeBron, right? The stars of the league, D-Wade, right?
Yep.
So the stars of the league. But now the stars of the league aren't from the U.S. Now there's still stars from the U.S. and we're going to talk about some of those guys. We know Anthony Edwards is a guy. Tyrese Halliburton is a guy. Many others too. I mean, we can look at
even
Mikal
Austin
Bridges.
Reeves is playing some good basketball, man.
Yeah, and to know this wasn't the best team. You know, we were missing guys like Trae Young, who I think could have been on that team. Cade Cunningham himself could have been on that team.
The Cade one is true. Trae Young, on the other hand, I'm not fully convinced.
Okay.
Even though, so there was actually, because interestingly enough, like, do you remember a couple weeks ago when Trae mentioned that he'd love to be on Team USA?
I do.
Like, there was like reporting, like within 24 hours of him saying that, about how apparently Trae Young like stressed the hell out of the coaches. Like apparently, like apparently there was like some quote that was like, like, are you ever gonna pass, or are you ever gonna run our plays, or something like that?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I guess where I was getting at is he's a top 15 American player in the
absolutely.
league. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if we're going by talent, he should be out there. But if we're going on effectiveness of how you win in this FIBA tournament, how he can be coached, how he can contribute to team basketball, yeah, maybe that's a different story. But
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's kind of interesting. And also I think the other thing that you look at as well is especially with a guy like Trae Young, being a little bit of a smaller guard in a game that, FIBA basketball in particular is more of a big oriented game. Like, you look at kind of like more old fashioned basketball. So like there might be some reasons like from like on the court that might make it a little more difficult for Trae. On the other hand, Jalen Brunson's been thriving pretty well.
Yeah, Brunson was another guy that I missed on my little list. So
yeah, I mean, he came in and he's come in and essentially been the leader of that team, almost right away. But even though he's been the leader, Troy, the closer, the go-to scorer, the alpha of this team has been Anthony Edwards. Mm-hmm. And we've talked quite a bit about Ant on this podcast. I think we're all pretty high on Anthony Edwards and what his future is. I think the consensus has been we're more concerned on how the Timberwolves can actually capitalize on that potential, because they've had guys in the past. They had Kevin Garnett. They even had Andrew Wiggins, who, we all thought was a bust. And then he went to the Warriors, was in a good system where he was put in a role that made sense for him. And it's like, oh yeah, that looks like a guy that was drafted #1 overall.
Stephon Marbury and Kevin Garnett on the same team.
Oh man. There's fumbling the bag, and then there's that. But Troy, in all seriousness, like when you look at this, when you look at the Timberwolves roster, there is that apprehension of like, man, you really backed yourself in that corner with Rudy Gobert, especially, assuming that, he starts to see a little bit of a decline, although he is, trying to stretch the floor a little bit more. Like, Ant is so good that even all the questions that you have about the Timberwolves, you can just kind of go, yeah, They have Ant. So they'll be okay as long as they have Ant. But on
Yeah,
the
but
flip
they will be
side,
okay, is I think the key word. I don't know
right,
if they're going to be competing for a Western Conference championship.
right. And here's the other thing. On the flip side, how much longer are they going to be okay?
Mhm.
Right? How much
Yeah.
longer would Anthony Edwards want to stay? Because, like, if you are a guy like Ant, especially who, your brand could probably grow, more so in other markets. You're not historically on a franchise that's seen a lot of success. You know, you're with other guys who think they're the alpha of the team. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a lot of interesting things, but I mean, like, Troy, if there's anything we're seeing on the world stage, it's just how good this guy is, and more importantly, like, the Timberwolves, they've had a lot of opportunities in the past with some really talented players. This, in particular, is a different type of opportunity.
Right, right. And something that you always say, Sean, is if we had to do a 2021 redraft at Pistons #1, we'd pick Cade 7 days out of the week and twice on Sundays, right? And the
Yep.
Minnesota Timberwolves, if they had to redo that 2020 NBA draft, they're taking Ant 7 times a week and twice on Sundays. So
Oh,
it's a very
100%.
similar dynamic, as we Pistons fans know about our Cade
Yeah.
Cunningham. So I feel like we can relate to that on a lot of levels. But yeah, I mean, but also one thing that's different is, I guess, the winning culture that the Pistons have. I mean, that's why we are calling this a restoration. That's why we are hiring guys like Monty Williams. That's why we have a guy like Troy Weaver. That's why we've drafted around Cade
Right.
already.
And I
And
already see the comments now. What winning culture? Well, he's talking about the winning culture of this team having 3 championships in the past.
right. I
This
mean,
team
and
being
that to me
yeah.
speaks volumes. What, 6 Eastern Conference finals appearances in a row?
It yeah,
Not
like
many
like
teams
6 or
have
7
that.
appearances in a 10-year span, the most in the
Yeah.
2000s decade.
And yes, of course, you can make the argument the last 15 years we haven't been relevant. And yes, that is an accurate statement. However, that's because of poor management and poor coaching and poor drafting. But those days are slowly behind us.
Right,
But what
but
this relates
again,
back
there's
to,
also something like you
yeah,
said, like there's
yeah,
like you can call it a restoration because there's something to build off of. Whereas
right,
with the
yes,
Timberwolves, it's like
right. And
whereas
that's what I'm getting at, is not only is there nothing to build off of, but also they haven't made a lot of progress in other areas. And man, are they locked into that Rudy Gobert contract,
yeah,
which does not help them in any way imaginable.
it's like building a house on a foundation of paper mache.
Right.
It's
And
just
also looking at another guy playing well for Team USA, Walker Kessler, and he could have been a Timberwolf.
yep. Absolutely, man. I mean, he could have been a Timberwolf. They could have kept that pick and multiple other picks, by the way. It's like that's something that, they're gonna have to rectify and figure out over the long term. I I know Rudy made a 3 in FIBA, in a FIBA, exhibition game and compared it to losing his virginity. I know Karl Anthony Towns. I'm not sure if you've seen any of the footage of him either, but he's playing for the Dominican. I believe he's playing for the
Yeah.
Dominican Republic this
Yes.
summer, and he's been letting it fly too.
Yeah. Yeah. From downtown, I saw a couple nice threes. So,
Yeah, and it's like even though I still don't think that's even though I still don't like, even though like I still think there's not a chance that those guys can win a championship together. It's still a fun offensive nucleus. It's something that's, inherent. Like if I'm on Game Pass and I see the Timberwolves, they're one of the more appealing teams on there. Like they're like I'm still excited to see like what those guys could do together. But again, like I think with Ant especially too of, like as great of a basketball player as he is, it just really feels like he needs that other guy around him who can help set things up, can help set the table so that he can just go in and be Ant and dominate. And I just
mhm.
feel like they don't have that guy. They have Mike Conley, who's a solid veteran point guard, but like, I mean, if they had Mike Conley 10 years ago, they'd be set, right? But like, this
Yeah,
is Mike
yeah, no,
Conley
they
now.
are on a near retirement, Mike Conley. So
Yeah, yeah,
17 years in
exactly.
the league, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, again, it's so fascinating because that's just how that's just how minuscule the difference between good teams and great teams are in the NBA. Where the guy like Anthony Edwards is like, this guy is so good that if you just put one or two right guys around him, it can change the entire trajectory of their franchise. But again, if they continue to make mistakes and, not put the right pieces around him, that's a whole other thing. I mean, Troy, they're like, let's just stop dancing around this. They have $300 million committed to big men going forward. And
Not the
and you
direction
mean
that the league is.
shooting around Anthony Edwards, not bigs.
Yeah.
So,
but also Big's on a big contract, like you brought up, but also like Rudy Gobert does not have anywhere even remotely close to any type of outside game. And I mean, if he did, that might be a different conversation. But the fact that he's not super strong, he can't shoot free throws, let alone threes or a mid-range game. I'm not too optimistic as a Timberwolves fan.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I'm not optimistic about the outlook of this year. However, if I'm watching FIBA and I'm watching like Anthony Edwards like do his thing, I know at the very least, as long as that guy's in the building, we do have a shot to do something going forward. Because I don't think there's a doubt that like in a few years we'll be looking at Ant as like a top 5, top 10 player in the league. Like he's that good.
Well, I would say he's maybe top 15 as we speak.
Oh, yeah. I think that's fair to say. Yeah, like especially going into this year. Yeah. Like this is going to be what? Year 3 or year 4 for him?
Year 4.
Yeah, I mean for all intents and purposes, he is in prime position to be a breakout guy. I know we talked about Cade as being an MIP candidate. I think Ant could be that too. It's just, again, do they have the right players around him? And right now, the answer is obviously no. It's just going to be interesting how they actually fix it, right? Yeah. But I think other guys that have been really exciting in FIBA as well, like, I know we mentioned a couple of their names already briefly, but, Jaren Jackson Jr. for me is a guy that I think in particular, like, some of the high effort plays he made on the defensive end, like I know we talked about him like briefly a couple weeks ago, but when I watched Jaren Jackson Jr., like, especially like in this, in this FIBA competition where he kind of has, a little bit more of a highlighted role on this Team USA team, like, I just feel like he gets lost in the sauce of all these talented young players we have in the league. It's like, oh yeah, defensive player of the year, Jaren Jackson Jr. Like it's almost like to a casual fan, they might not fully be aware of him, but I think he's a guy, especially with Ja's 25 game suspension to start the season. Like if Memphis is going to, do it right, they're going to play around him while Ja's out of the lineup. And I think there's a real opportunity for Jaren Jackson Jr. to really turn some heads. I mean, he's going into year 5 or year 6 himself. He's getting into his mid-20s. I mean, we're getting close to what's supposed to be his prime, Troy, and that's scary because he looks like he's just getting started.
Yeah, that definitely is exciting, and I would even throw him in that category for potential MIP candidates just because he's a guy that has so much athleticism and really, I mean, on the defensive end, Sean, I mean, name a better 4 on the defensive end in the league. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
He has it. He has it. And when that team is looking for leadership guys, even though I probably wouldn't call him a veteran yet, he certainly can speak in that locker room, I think. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing his year.
Yeah, I think this is going to be I think this is going to be like one of the most important years of his career. I mean, every year is important from this point on for Memphis because you're looking to compete, you're looking to do things. But like at the same time, in particular with the circumstances that they're facing, with the culture concerns that they have, and with them missing as big of a player and star to their team as they will over the course of those first few games, like if they want to continue, if they want to stay on this path, Jaren Jackson Jr. will have to play like an all-star.
Which shows me, and that gives me 2 things to think of. More touches, no matter what, because Ja's out. And more just opportunity to shine. And that alone, I think, will give him not just touches, but more weight on the back of his shoulder, but more weight that I think he's looking for and weight that he wants to carry. So,
Yep. And Troy, the other thing I love about FIBA, or about FIBA competition in particular, is although you do get to see some NBA players go out and do some, go out and play some basketball in the summer, you also get to see NBA players play against non-NBA players. And
yeah.
because of that, you can kind of see them really get in their bag. And Troy, I want to show you a pass that Luka made over the weekend against Japan. I mean, if this is how Luka's looking in August,
Wait till October.
Holy. Like, he looks to be in great shape just from being paused here alone. Like he looks like he could be in a Nutrisystem commercial compared to how he was last season. But, Troy, check out this pass. Look at this pass, Troy. Right open in the corner.
And it could have hit the other guy in the face, but it didn't.
Without a doubt. Oh my gosh, it totally could have. How hilarious would that have been? That would have been like remember the James Harden pass? Wasn't that James? Was it Giannis that passed it off of James Harden's head?
I think yes.
Yep.
That sounds familiar.
Yep, good times.
Yeah, what if that's I can't even think of a wing. What if that's Reggie Bullock or Tim Hardaway Jr. next season,
Come on now. Like, we can picture that. I mean, they can't be worse than they were to end last season.
Oh, don't even tell me about it. Yeah, that was bad. I was so hoping for a little push. I was so hoping for like a 7th seed, but they got an 11th seed.
I think their roster is far more equipped for them to actually be competitive this year. Now, whether or not they actually are going to do anything, I highly doubt it. I still think the West is way too deep. I still think this team has too many issues on the defensive end. I'm still interested to see if something does end up transpiring between Dallas and Detroit, because there has been, a lot of smoke with that fire for all intents and purposes, with the conversations, between them and possibly getting Bojan Bogdanovic. Like, I do think that actually would make a lot of sense for them, because, if you're going to be this offensive juggernaut, go all in, be that offensive juggernaut. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean,
right.
Just saying,
they have pieces, but they're not all in. Sure.
Yeah. 100. They have pieces, but they don't have the puzzle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, just looking, I think if you're going to take anything away from, Luka's international play, I mean, it's always, when you watch Luka play for Slovenia, I mean, he might go down as one of, as perhaps the greatest international player ever, just like on that stage, as far as like what he's doing and how he's putting his country on the map. Like, I know they only have like won a bronze medal or got close to medaling in his time, with Slovenia. But the fact that this was a team that in the past hadn't even qualified for Olympic play until they had Luka Doncic, come on, man. It's unreal.
It's like 1979 with Larry Bird and the Indiana State Sycamores, right? I mean, like a middle pack of a crappy conference, and then you make it to the championship game.
I mean, if they do something in the World Cup this year, it is quite literally just Luka and a ton of other guys who, again, they're professional basketball players,
shooters,
but they're not NBA players. They don't like Goran Dragic isn't even on the court for them right now.
Yeah.
So you talk about USA missing guys, like that's one thing. They have a deep system. They can handle that type of thing. Slovenia misses a guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they miss Luka, I mean, they don't have a program. Like, that's, you know what I mean?
Correct.
So like talk about that pressure, by the way, on a player too. That's always going to be an ongoing storyline with Luka to me, like in the background. But another international player that I want to bring up, and this is a guy that we're a big fan of on this pod. And I know we've talked about, and I know we're a big fan of his teammate as well. Troy, I am so excited to see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander take another step this year, because, oh my goodness, he's looking dominant. It just, in the brief action and stuff I've seen with him in Team Canada, like with Team Canada, I mean, Troy, This guy is the way. He's the truth. Like, this guy on the basketball court, he's everything you want. And,
Mhm.
like, when I'm looking at, in particular, first of all, how much talent Team Canada has in particular compared to in the past. I mean, they have Shea, they have RJ Barrett, they have Jamal Murray when it comes time for the Olympics. Like, this is a squad that they have up in Canada right now. But
Yeah.
also more so, Troy, I'm really starting to think in the back of my head that there is a legitimate possibility. And this might be my most bold take of the summer. I think there's a chance the Thunder host a playoff series,
Wow.
like have home court advantage in round 1 of the Western
So a
Conference
top
playoffs.
4 is what you're saying, a top 4.
Yeah, they have a legitimate chance to be a top 4 team if all things fire, like, if all the cylinders fire off. I mean, they have the recipe to be a breakout team. You have a guy in Chet Holmgren making his debut as a rookie who can be that back line, stud for them on the defensive end. And then on the flip side, you have all these playmakers, all these guys in SGA, Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams. Like, what does this team not have other than experience?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely your biggest take of the summer. I'm probably more in that 6th or 7th camp, but 6th or
I'm
7th
not
is
I'm not
still
saying they're going to. I'm saying I think there's a legitimate chance.
Sure, sure, sure. I
Is that
guess, yeah,
crazy?
it's crazy. It's crazy, but it's not impossible. Maybe I'll just give you that. It's not impossible, but it's
It's
crazy.
it's crazy, but it's not insane.
It's crazy. It's not insane. Yes. But no, I mean, the Thunder are good. The Thunder are a rising team. I still think they're 2 years away from being that 4th seed, Sean, but still, nonetheless, I see them being the future of the league. Absolutely. I mean, I would hope every NBA fan sees the play of Giddey this past year, the rising starness of Shea, and yeah, Shea will
Troy,
get you at the mid range. What's up?
I can't believe I'm about to say this. I think there's and again, I could see this blowing up in my face, biting me in the ass, and this could be something that we look back on later and laugh at because I mean that's always what happens when you make takes before the season. But Troy, I think there's a legitimate chance the Thunder could get more wins than the Warriors this season. I honestly think there's a legitimate chance. If you were to put those teams pound for pound, like right next to each other, like, yes, Steph is one of the top 5 players in the world, but I think there's a legitimate chance we're looking at SGA as a top 5, top 10 guy in the world after this season. And you look at all the pieces they have in OKC. I get it. Over the last few years, they haven't quite been there. Last year was their first year of really getting on the cusp. I get it. But if you look at everything they have right now and what type of momentum they have going into this season, all the draft capital, if they really wanted to fire this mother up, they could. I'm just saying.
the the reason I don't think that's as crazy as the first statement you made, because my statement of, remember I said, I see the Thunder at maybe a 6th seed as their
Yeah.
absolute peak. Well, I kind of see the absolute downfall of the Warriors being maybe even a 7th seed, just because we have no idea what the CP3 Steph combo is going to look like. And we know Jordan Poole was good. We know he wasn't, a top 10 player in the league, but we know that Jordan Poole helped get them some dubs, and Jordan Poole also made a little push with them in the playoffs when they won the finals. We don't know what this team's going to look like fully without him, with this aging roster on their hands. So I guess I see that reality, but only if Thunder are 6th and Warriors are 7th.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
valid. I mean, again, it's one of those things where I don't know. We will have a much better idea of what this team's potential is once we actually see Chet Holmgren in action and how much of a guy he is day one. What I will say, there was some buzz around Chet because he apparently played in some pickup games with Kevin Durant It's some other NBA players, and he reportedly scored 31 points in that game.
Wow.
Now, I don't remember when we started tracking points and stats in rec games. So that might tell you just how desperate we've gotten, like in this whole charade now that we're like keeping stats on, on rec games. However, I mean, the footage that I saw, like he was going toe to toe with Kevin Durant on a basketball court. And additionally, like, I just think you look at as far as all the rookies that are coming in, he probably has the least pressure in the sense that he's not going to be asked to be the number one guy. He doesn't have to carry the load. Like, he can come in like similar to how he even played at Gonzaga and be a supporting player. And you have a guy that's that talented who, for all intents and purposes, is going to set screens, block shots, get boards, and shoot pull-up J's or lobs at the rim. I mean, when that guy's your utility guy, your ceiling is high.
And I just get the vibes that he is a winning basketball player. Of that, I don't see a massive ego in this with this guy coming in.
Not at all.
And I see him playing the role of whatever the coaching staff and upper management wants him to. And I think he does that. He's going to do that well. So I'm not saying his ceiling's a role player in any way, shape, or form. But what I'm saying is he's a guy that will play any role that's given him. He will play the cards in which he has dealt with and do them well. Yes.
Yeah, most definitely. And, I still think, they're, obviously it's not going to be, firing on all cylinders day one. They're just like any other team where, they're still going to have to go through their growing pains. However, like if you look at how this team's been trending over the last few years and you look at everything that's building up for them going into this season, I think I think they are the prime breakout team of the entire league. Obviously I think the Pistons are right up there too, but like the Thunder just have so much talent because of all the draft capital they got. And they got all those picks and SGA in that trade.
Yeah. That changes everything. That changes everything in their path moving forward. And it's going to be certainly an exciting year, Sean.
I mean, Troy, if they didn't have, let's say they get all those picks, they draft all the same players, they have the exact same roster they do right now, but they don't have Shea. We're probably looking at this team as like, man, this is a fun up and coming young roster that may compete for a play-in game, but ultimately will fall short.
Yeah, but Shea gives them a new hope and a new direction, right?
But Shea just adds a whole different element. And the fact that you have two elite playmakers like SGA and Josh Giddey in the same backcourt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know how big of a Josh Giddey guy I am.
Yeah.
I'm giddy for Giddey.
You're giddy.
I'm going to try to forgetty that one. Anyway. Oh my gosh. Man, even though it's like a slow time in the year, for the league, at the very least, I'm just grateful we still have, some form of basketball with FIBA stuff. And, I think especially as actual FIBA competition gets underway, because right now it's technically just, it's just like a ton of, like exhibition games. Once we actually start seeing some World Cup action, I'm excited to see, like some of the other players, that are on those like less covered teams. Like obviously, I'm excited to see what Team USA does, but on the flip side, we brought up Cat earlier with Dominican Republic. I'm excited to see, like what he can do with them. France always has a really competitive team. Yeah. Always intrigued to see, to see what they do. I mean, just as a whole, it's always just fascinating as well, just to see culturally how every team approaches the game and plays it differently. So it's still a really fun time of year, and it's still a really, really fun tournament to watch.
Yeah. No, I'm excited too. And I think Spain, another one you can throw in there of a team that always produces a competitive roster and really they showed some competitive games already. So
yeah, outside of the USA, I'd argue Spain's probably the best in the world.
Yeah.
Do you remember back in the day, man? Like maybe this is just me just being a hardcore basketball nerd, but like I just remember tuning in back in the day, like Team USA versus Team Spain. Having like even though like you felt comfortable because Team USA had LeBron, Kobe, D Wade, like they had all these stars. Spain had the Gasol brothers. They
Yeah.
had Ricky Rubio. They had all these guys that were playing in the Spanish leagues and like the Euro leagues, which are still really intense competition.
Yeah.
And they just put up a fight, man.
Yeah. 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 I don't think I quite had the same worries, but I do remember watching some of those highlights, especially in that '08 Olympics was really my first big exposure to Team USA basketball. And yeah, there were some matchups. So
Yeah, my first exposure was I remember the day I remember like the day that Team USA got eliminated in the '04
oh
Olympics,
yeah. Yeah.
and I
By
just
Spain,
remember
right?
what's that?
By Spain.
Yeah, yep, yeah, by Spain, funny enough, and I just remember the consensus just being, "How?"
Yeah.
Like, literally, "How?" And that's how the Redeem Team became born.
Yes. Yes. Yes, it is.
But yeah, man, I mean, I'm just, every week that passes by, we get closer to basketball. I'm just excited for when we finally have some hoops to talk about.
Same.
It'll be great when we have our boy Jeff back. Coming up in the coming weeks, we'll definitely be doing some more player previews. We'll be, breaking down the season a little bit more. I'm sure there's definitely other angles, stories, things that will come out. We will definitely be covering it here on the channel. So if you like what we do here, if you like what we do here, be sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you're not missing anything. But also be sure you follow my guys on X at Troy Sergey 44. You can follow Jeff on X at Jeff Iafrady. You can follow me on X at Sean Halfcourt. That's one of my favorite ongoing bits we have now. Is just the on X.
Show a video from X.
Troy, we are idiots, but that's what I love about it. Anyway, thank you all so much for tuning in. Troy, thank you for being here, and thank you all for being here. We will catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you're subscribed.